Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. We're still on the fables. The next fable is called The Ass and the Lapdog. Interesting title. There was once a man who had an ass and a lapdog. The ass was housed in the stable with plenty of oats and ate to heat, and was as well off as an ass could be. The little dog was made a great pet of by his master, who fondled him and often let him lie in his lap. And if he went out to dinner, he would bring back a titbit or two to give the dog when he ran back to meet him on his return. The ass had, it is true, a good deal of work to do, carting or grinding the corn, or carrying the burdens of the farm, and ere long he became very jealous, contrasting his own life of labour with the ease and idleness of the lapdog. At last one day he broke his halter, and frisking into the house, just as his master sat down to dinner, he pranced and capered about, mimicking the frolics of the little favourite, upsetting the table and smashing the crockery with his clumsy efforts. Not content with that, he even tried to jump on his master's lap, as he had so often seen the dog allowed to do. At that, the servants, seeing the danger their master was in, belaboured the silly ass with sticks and cudgels, and drove him back to his stable, half dead with his beating. "Alas," he cried, "all of this I have brought on myself. Why would I not be satisfied with my natural and honourable position, without wishing to imitate the ridiculous antics of that useless little lapdog?" And that's sort of the lessons there in itself, is just be grateful for what you have. That's the lesson in that. The Fir Tree and the Bramble. A fir tree was boasting to a bramble, and said, somewhat contemptuously, "You poor creature, you are of no use whatsoever. Now look at me. I am useful for all sorts of things, particularly with men when they build houses. They can't do without me then." But the bramble replied, "Ah, that's all very well, but you wait till they come with axes and saws to cut you down, and then you'll wish you were a bramble and not a fir." And apparently the lesson in that: better poverty without a care than wealth with its many obligations. The frogs complained against the sun. Once upon a time, the sun was about to take himself a wife. The frogs, in terror, all raised their voices to the skies, and Jupiter, disturbed by the noise, asked them what they were croaking about. They replied, "The sun is bad enough, even while he is single, drying up our marshes with his heat as he does. But what will become of us if he marries and begets other sons?" That's a very strange one, but okay. The Dog, the Cock, and the Fox. A dog and a cock became great friends, and agreed to travel together. At nightfall, the cock flew up into the branches of a tree to roost, while the dog curled himself up inside the trunk, which was hollow. At break of day the cock woke up the crew, as usual. A fox heard, and wishing to make a breakfast of him, came and stood under the tree, and begged him to come down. "I should so like," said he, "to make the acquaintance of one who has such a beautiful voice." The cock replied, "Would you just wake my porter, who sleeps at the foot of the tree? He'll open the door and let you in." The fox accordingly rapped on the trunk, when out rushed the dog and tore him to pieces. The Goat and the Bull. No, sorry, it's not the goat, it's the gnat. Oh, what is a gnat? I've never heard of a gnat. The gnat and the bull, and it's spelled Gnat. A gnat alighted on one of the horns of a bull, and remained sitting there for a considerable time. When it had rested sufficiently, and was about to fly away, it said to the bull, "Do you mind if I go now?" The bull merrily raised his eyes and remarked, without interest, "It's all one to me. I didn't notice when you came, and I shan't know when you decide to go away." And the lesson in that, apparently, even though very short, weird one, we may often be of more consequence in our own eyes than in the eyes of our neighbours. The Bear and the Travellers. Two travellers were on the road together when a bear suddenly appeared on the scene. Before he observed them, one made for a tree at the side of the road and climbed up into the branches and hid there. The other was not so nimble as his companion, and, as he could not escape, he threw himself on the ground and pretended to be dead. The bear came up and sniffed all around him, but he kept perfectly still and held his breath, for they say that a bear will not touch a dead body. The bear took him for a corpse and went away. When the coast was clear, the traveller in the tree came down and asked the other what it was the bear had whispered to him when he put his mouth to his ear. The other replied, "He told me never again to travel with a friend who deserts you at the first sign of danger." Obviously the bear didn't whisper, but he's making it up. The lesson in that is misfortune tests the sincerity of friendships. It's very true. It actually does. The next one is called The Flea and the Man. A flea bit a man, and bit him again, and again, till he could stand it no longer, but made a thorough search for it, and at last succeeded in catching it. Holding it between his finger and thumb, he said, or rather he shouted, so angry he was, "Who are you, pray, you wretched little creature, that you make so free with my person?" The flea, terrified, whimpered in a weak little voice, "Oh, sir, pray let me go. Don't kill me. I'm such a little thing that I can't do you much harm." But the man laughed and said, "I'm going to kill you now, at once. Whatever is bad has got to be destroyed, no matter how slight the harm it does." And the lesson in that is, do not waste your pity on a scamp. The Bee and Jupiter. A queen bee from Hymettus flew up to Olympus with some fresh honey from the hive as a present to Jupiter, who was so pleased with the gift that he promised to give her anything she liked to ask for. She said she would be very grateful if he could give stings to the bees to kill people who robbed them of their honey. Jupiter was greatly displeased with this request, for he loved mankind, but he had given his word, so he said that stings they should have. The stings he gave them, however, were of such a kind that, whenever a bee stings a man, the sting is left in the wound, and the bee dies. Evil wishes, like fowls, come home to roost. And apparently, that's how bees did indeed get their sting, because Jupiter gave them 'em. The oak and the reed. The oak that grew on the bank of the river was uprooted by a severe gale of wind and thrown across the stream. It fell among some reeds growing by the water, and said to them, "How is it that you, who are so frail and slender, have managed to weather the storm, whereas I, with all my strength, have been torn up by the roots, hurled into the river?" "You were stubborn," came the reply, and fought against the storm, which proved stronger than you. But we bow and yield every breeze, and thus the gale passed harmlessly over our heads. And that's really a tale of how trees are meant to survive a storm, if there ever was one. The Blind Man and the Cub. There was once a blind man who had so fine a sense of touch that, when any animal was put into his hands, he could tell what it was, merely by the feel of it. One day, the cub of a wolf was put into his hands, and he was asked what it was. He felt it for some time, and then said, "Indeed, I'm not sure whether it's a wolf's cub or a fox's, but this I know, it would never do to trust it in a sheepfold." That's a very odd one. There's a lesson in that, apparently. Evil tendencies are easily shown. And I guess it means that because it was a wolf or a fox cub, that it had evil tendencies just against sheep and lambs and goats and cows. It don't mean it's an evil animal. That's not what it means. The Boy and the Snails. A farmer's boy went looking for snails, and when he had picked up both in his hands, and they were full, he set about making a fire, at which to roast them, for he meant to eat them. When it got well alight, and the snails began to feel the heat, they gradually withdrew more and more into their shells, with the hissing noise they always make when they do so. When the boy heard it, he said, "You abandoned creatures, how can you find heart to whistle when your houses are burning?" Don't know what that's all about, but that's a really weird one. I'm going to leave this here, guys. Thank you for listening. I do appreciate it. And yeah, they're quite bizarre. Some of these are quite bizarre. Many blessings.